Hi, this is Thad with Kitchen Back Global Partners and Cab Software, and welcome to the Adventure Channel today. We're really excited about the subject we're going to be talking about, which is partnership integration, KPIs, and then also financials. Like I said, we got some good content to review today, and we're also very fortunate to have two lovely guests. One of them, for his first time here, is Isaac Anderson from One Source Cabinets out in Arizona. Thanks for joining us today, Isaac.
Thanks for having me.
And, one of our veterans who've been on like a lot of these because I've got compromising pictures of them is Rodney Seppala from Triumph Interior. So
Yeah,
thanks for joining us.
good to be here today.
Yeah,
Excited.
one thing before we get started, I wanted to apologize a little bit. I have a temporary insert in my mouth, and I have a tendency to lisp a little bit. And, Rodney and Isaac, being the very sensitive guys, have taken a liking to calling me the lisper, which it really is not right. But hey, look, you got to deal with these guys, what you got to deal with. So anyway, we're gonna have a good time today, and thanks again for joining us. The first subject that we're going to talk about is the partnership integration. I think it's going to be very powerful in the future in how companies are going to operate. They are going to become very connected through communication and technology, also core values, vision. I think in the last blog, I just mentioned that, you know, if someone can go into like traction or whatever, make their company really good. But the fact of the matter is, there's a whole lot of other companies that you're partnered with that if you are not having you don't have a really tight relationship, they're going to have an impact on their customers' experience, bottom line. And so that's why it's so imperative that they have to start working together closely like you've never seen before. I've heard a lot of people say it's impossible to do that. Like you've got all these silo businesses, but you look like at the automobile industry, and well, every one of their suppliers are in those meetings, and they're doing everything they can to make it more efficient. So anyway, I think that's the way things are going to go in the kitchen and bath business. The one thing I did want to mention on this screen, two things actually, is the group traction meetings, which is really all about process improvement. We're trying to bring these teams together, kitchen and bath dealers, along with manufacturers, and then we start incorporating fabricators and everybody again that's involved in how the business works and how the customer experience is going to roll. So, with that said, I'd like to turn it over to let's start with Rodney and get his thoughts about, is this possible? Is this going to be a big advantage for companies moving forward? Do you just think that people are going to, like, at the end of the day, yeah, it sounds real good, but we're not ready to make that step, which is a meaningful step because you're going to be sharing a lot of things internally about your business with other ones you typically haven't, and things that they haven't shared either. So, Rodney, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I got to be honest. When I first heard about this from you, Thad, I was like, I don't know if it's going to work. Like, people are going to be too close to the chest and all that. And I've been on other group traction meetings, but it wasn't with the same industry. So I'm super excited about the idea of having all cabinet people all in the same room, sharing ideas, sharing problems, having like this camaraderie going. I think it's going to be awesome because we'll be able to create some energy and have some synergy based off of it. And, studies show that the number one thing somebody wants in a job is personal growth. So like, if we're all getting in a group together and challenging each other to be better, like how exciting is that? That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. One of the things about it too, like I was mentioning, like these group have 7 people in there, and there's like 5 kitchen and bath dealers. And we've always talked about the speed of change of how things are going to continue to accelerate. And it's going to be difficult for companies to stay ahead of this thing, right? They're going to like be bombarded by all kinds of technology and things that are going on with consumer behaviors out there. And being able to meet on a regular basis with other dealers and manufacturers, everybody out there is experiencing different things and gathering information from different standpoints that they can bring to these meetings and share with the group. So it's like, this group learning session that's going on that I think is again going to be absolutely something that companies are going to need to do if they want to be successful in the future. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my man Isaac out in the warm state of Arizona and get his thoughts about it.
Well, thank you, Thad. So as a manufacturer, just having that ability to get realistic or real feedback from dealers, contractors, subs that you're working with on a regular basis, I think that's super valuable. Just creating clarity in the process, where I think a lot of that's lacking. Just from our point of view, I see a lot of roadblocks come up where our customers have a tough time, even though as a manufacturer, you have the ability to do a lot of things internally and build just whatever you want to. But at the end of the day, what provides value to the customer is where the demand is. So if you can find what you do well that the customers want, and the best way to do that is communication. So I think this driving communication will really help this in the meetings. And as like if you're talking to dealers and they're looking at you as a partner, as a manufacturing partner, they want to know what you do well, where you make money. Because ultimately, if you're making money doing something well and it's what their customers are looking for, most likely that's where they're going to make money as well. Is something that you can do a great job at, make money at, and everyone's successful at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'm always encouraging dealers to do is really help. Some of the remodelers, they're like small businesses that are out there, and they're really their expertise lies in the skill sets of what they do, which they're great at. But there's other things in the business that we need to help them with, in like their marketing and how they go to market, how they take market share, and that's all about that partnership. This applies to custom builders too. Like if you've got 5 custom builders you do business with, and they want to grow, then there's ways that you can work together to help them get to their goals, which in turn is going to help you get to your goals. The other thing is, like, I have a company down in Florida right now, and they just recently had a big meeting with all their subcontractors, and great things came from it. Like what they needed, like what their goal was as far as their brand and how customers were going to see this company. And then also they heard back from the subcontractors and things that the kitchen and bath dealer could do to help make their lives better. So it was really, this kind of integrated communication that was going on. And this is the first step. I mean, you can imagine after you've had 3 or 4 of these meetings and good communication, throughout, that everybody kind of gets it. They're all on the same page. And that, that's a wonderful thing, because incredible things can happen when you build that camaraderie and teams. So I'll, I'm not going to pick anybody. So Rodney or Isaac, whoever wants to start adding stuff, so I can shut up.
Yeah. So I have a question. I'm wondering, like, what type of questions do you guys think somebody should ask to know if you align with a company or a partner, to know if you have similar core values or vision or aligning visions? So do you have like a few questions that you think would be good to ask for people, so like, all right, we're a good fit together?
Yeah. Isaac, you want to answer it? I'll go. I'll take it real quick. So I think one of the things that you want to sit down and talk to them about is, most likely they don't have core values. Mm-hmm. They may, right? But I don't see it that often already out there. Or if they have a vision statement, they like put it together 10 years ago and then it went into a drawer somewhere. And the likelihood, I went to go visit a company one time that they had like 9 managers there. And I was like, what about your vision statement or mission statement? They're like, yeah, absolutely. We got one. Yeah, they're really proud. And I was like, okay, what is it? And no one in the room could answer what it was. And so we got to start working with them, understanding like, here's what ours are. But we also want to understand what your values are and what you're trying to achieve. What's your vision? How do you see this thing growing? And they're like, look, we just go out there, do installation, then we move on to the next job. Then they're like, okay, well, we really want to work closely with people and grow together, like be on the same page. I think you're going to start getting a feel for whether they're going to be a good partner for you. And this is going to come down to the manufacturer's views too. Like I know through this whole episode that's happened like over the last 9 months, a year, whatever, like some of the reactions from some of these manufacturers, you just have to shake your head and you're like, what in the world is going on? Like what happened to like us? Like we've lost communication, we've lost confidence in them. And we have to take a hard look at our partners to make sure we have the right one, that they have the similar culture that you do as a team. Because if they don't and they're off like in their own world over there and it's not on the same page, you're going to really struggle, partnering with these people and how you can get better. So Isaac, please, sir.
Yeah, I think just kind of tying into that, I think that not so much a question, but just the fact that a partner is willing to engage in the first place. I think that's just such a big step and going to be just such a huge roadblock is going to be that, is that person going to be ready to make that type of commitment to that customer vendor relationship and that B2B relationship, especially. So I think that's going to be one of the big hurdles to jump. Even, that let's call it a dating pool will be pretty shallow of people willing to even just make that investment of time and energy into that process. So that's going to be one of the biggest hurdles to climb. I think it's going to it'll gain traction as it moves forward, but I think it's going to be a hurdle at first to get people to get out of the mindset of sitting in their own tunnel, basically with that funnel vision, and then trying to branch out into thinking outside the box.
Yep, that is. I mean, I've never heard anybody tell me this, but I'll just throw this out there. I'm too busy right now to work on my business. And then the question is like, when are you not busy? And they're like, well, never. So you're never ever going to work on your business, but you're going to be successful long term. But it's them getting their head around it, right? Like you have to. I think in some respects you have to kind of sell all the advantages to these people. It's like trying to land a builder or something. Like you got to come to the party with something that they see as a lot of value and worth their time to get engaged in. We have to get a good program together. Say, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to achieve. We both want to grow together and be successful. And if they're just like, yeah, whatever, then hey, you probably need to still use them right then, but it's also time to start looking for somebody that has that type of mindset.
Yeah. And to ensure and I think maybe on the question side, making sure they've got internal buy-in throughout their infrastructure, so they're not just flying solo into that type of commitment either. Is it something that you've already sold internally that you've got that commitment to take on that challenge to improve, or is it something that just one person in the entity is embracing and everybody else is maybe either in the dark on it, or they don't have the buy-in to really be a solid partner in the process?
Yeah, I mean, that if it's just the leader that's involved in this and this doesn't spread throughout their organization, it's not going to mean anything. Like there's a lot of leaders out there that kind of like, well, they just go do their jobs. And if anybody has read anything about the Great Resignation, where 4.2 million people resigned from their jobs in August, you can already see this migration taking place from where they work at a company that does just treats maybe the employees like, okay, here's what you do. You come in and you do your work and that's it, right? But that's not what people are looking for. they're looking for someone coming to them and listening to ideas that they have. They're the ones that are doing that work every day. Like if you're going to improve processes, I don't know, it might be crazy to go to the people that actually do those processes every day and find out like how they can become better. And that's another mindset change too. That top down leadership has got to go. You can't. People won't embrace it. And the thing about it is, you have to understand there will be companies that are doing that out there, and you may experience a lot of turnover if you don't make this move with your company. I guarantee you, this great resignation thing that's going on right now is not going to it dissipates like in 3 or 4 or 5 months. No way. After COVID, people have really taken a hard look at where they work and their life, and they just want to enjoy it more. And that means working at some place that, is flexible and works for them, and they really, are, again, engaged in it.
That's a good point. I heard of a manufacturer that is going to 2 shifts, 12-hour shifts. So they'll have 12 hours a day, Monday through Wednesday is one group. And then the next group is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 12 hours. So they're really only working 36 hours, but they picked up another day of the work week. And then if the employees want the overtime, they take it. But I thought it was a really good creative way to give that flexibility. It's like, that's pretty cool. 3-day work week. Wow. And then if you want to work on Thursday, you can. And can you imagine those people that show up to work on Thursday, they made the choice to be there for the extra hours, and they're excited to be there. And I'm sure it's just spawning this really cool culture and vibe going on in the company. So.
Yeah. And the challenge companies have right now, especially manufacturers, they're bringing in their sales reps to work the floor. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty scary. But I think that's a great example of someone looking at it in a different way. And the good thing is he probably won't experience very much turnover because it's probably something they really like. And as they grow, like I said, that company is going to be attractive to other workers out there. Hey, how would you like to have this kind of schedule? They'd be like, oh man, that would be awesome. Guess what? Off they go. And they start standing there like, wow, where's all our people? So did you guys have any other thoughts or comments on this first subject that we talked about?
I think that covered most of my topics on it.
Yeah, we're good.
I'll just leave you with this on that one. I had put out there about the 1980 Olympic team, the hockey team that won gold. That was really 1,000 to 1. And just listening to Herb Brooks saying, it's not that you didn't have enough good players. You didn't work as a team. And when we look at a team, there's definitely the internal team. Now that's going to have to also expand to the external team. And if you're looking to compete with somebody and they have an internal team that works together really well and an external team, I wonder who's going to win that match.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. Is when we're, as a dealer, when we're selling a kitchen, we have to rely on our manufacturer. And if they're telling me, this lead time is X day, I have to know that I can trust that. So we have to look at them like they're our teammates, as if they're in our own building almost. If I can go over there and talk to them to make sure we're going to deliver on this, because if we don't deliver on it, then we're both losing out on the business.
Right. One thing that would be interesting is when, a cabinet rep is coming in, he wants to sell his line of cabinets, or whoever you're talking to. And you ask the question so we want to partner with companies that are similar like ours. So can you share your core values with us as a company? You know what you're going to get, right?
Yeah. Let me look at the back of my business card to see if we have them written there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, how often do they look at them? You've got to talk about that stuff on a regular basis, so it becomes ingrained in your culture.
Yeah. Yeah. we're discussing with our team right now, the sales team, to create that part of our sales script to integrate our core values at some point. A little bit, not right up in front in the sales script, but midway or towards the end of it, where we actually discuss our core values very briefly, but at least so the customer knows who they're dealing with and what they can expect from that side of things.
I think that's great. That's awesome, Rodney. I mean, I think if I was a customer and you were sharing your core values, I'd be like, wow, this company took the time to do this. And then also mention, like, everybody in our company knows what our core values are.
Yeah. At first, you might be like, well, that's annoying. But then you might be like, I'll probably do business with them anyway, because they at least talk about it.
Yeah, like you said, you're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but just say, hey, if you really want to kind of understand our company, you can look to our core values. I think that kind of tells the story, and all of our people are very engaged in it.
Yeah.
I think that would be something different from the guy down the street, right? That is going to, I think, it's all about building that trust and stuff, right? And confidence.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, really personalize it.
You mentioned a sales script. That's even a rarity in general for especially the kitchen and bath industry for retailers. I mean, it's dealers. Actually, I'm not sure I've run across many that promote that inside their org. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it's something we're trying to. It's new to us to develop, but we've been kicking around for a couple of weeks, and now I'm like, man, we need this so bad, because everybody's kind of running around saying their own little things, and you're like, wait, what? You said that? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Or the next time you're like, well, that was really good. Wow, like we should write that down. So that's what we're trying to. It's like that teamwork thing.
Yeah.
So get all the designers, salespeople together, and say, let's get better together. Like, all right, you're the best salesperson.
That the brand has some consistency to it.
Yeah.
That every touch point you're having with a customer kind of reinforces what you guys are all about.
Yeah. Yeah. And in our sales meetings, I'll call the top performer out and say, how are you doing it? What's your secret right now? And sometimes they have an answer and sometimes they don't, but it's like getting everybody thinking on that level.
Yeah. Sharing best practices, we should be learning every day. Like, we have to be students today.
Yeah.
Things are, I mean, I say it so much, I know people are sick of hearing it, but in the next 5 years, you just watch what happens. This industry is going to turn upside down. And if you don't have the basics in place, like the processes and systems, and then you got to convert all these things, but you don't have a clean backyard, you got to go clean that first and then build the culture there. And I mean, that's time consuming. It never takes overnight. And while you're doing that, those other companies that have already done it are moving forward on other things, embracing new technologies, attracting best talent out there.
Yeah.
Owners just have to take it serious. I don't know what else to tell them.
No, I agree completely. It's kind of like that. You ever see that visual of the recession? It's like great companies are pedaling downhill as fast as they can in good times. And then by the time they hit the uphill or the recession, they already crested the hill down to the other side of the good economy. So it's like they get that momentum going and they keep it going so they can ride through a recession, which I'm not saying there's a recession, but we don't know what's going to happen. It's a pretty crazy environment right now.
Right. I don't think the boom is going to last forever. I mean, you look over history, like you say, I've seen some of this go on, not just this. So, anyway, well, great. This is a great discussion. You guys have a lot of good insight. Are you guys ready to move on to the next one now?
Yes, sir.
Let's do it.
All right. David, you throw up that screen for us. This is promotes probably one of the scariest things to businesses out there in our industry. Every time I just talk about KPIs, I've seen owners just run out the back door. I obviously kidding in a little bit, but if you're going to improve as a company, you have to have KPIs and ways to measure it. Otherwise, improvement is just we feel better about it. And that's not going to last. That's not a model that's realistic. you've got to have what you understand in the industry, where the averages are, and where you are. But you have to have these things in place, and you know that's how you continue to measure how you're getting better. I move on with these guys here real quickly, but I was working with a team yesterday, and one of the people we were talking about where should you set your closing ratios, and I was like, well, 50% plus. And someone said, well, in our industry, that's high for the average. I was like, well, yeah, I didn't know that you guys were planning on being average. And I was like, wait a second, let's take a step back. We look at the bell curve, and there's a lot of people in the center, right? They're all in the same box. They don't stand out. Like, if that's the goal, then I think we need to have a different discussion. Like, we want to get down here and be the best at it, and the best is better than what average does. The closing ratios have to be that high, but you got to be able to measure them.
Yeah.
A gross margin for a person, man, that is like, I've worked with some companies recently, and they're like, well, we're struggling. I look at a gross margin per person, and it's like 100 or less or 110. I'm like, that's not going to cut it. 110,000, it should be at least 150 plus.
So, Thad, can you explain to everybody how to calculate gross margin per person for
actually,
the layman like
I
me?
made it up, and I was hoping nobody would ask me that question. Okay, so gross margin per person is taking the combined gross margin that the company made. You could do it like through September if you want to, and then divide it by 9, and then push it out to what it's going to be for the year. Or you could look at last year and see an annual combined gross margin that you generated. And then you take the number of people that are involved in the sales. That's going to be a sales manager. That's going to be sales people, designers. That's going to be any support people that they have. If you have project managers, that's another person that's going to be in there in that head count. And if you have installers, and those installers are not going up in cost of goods sold, then they also need to be counted in that head count, because they're artificially increasing the gross margin dollars because there's no cost against those sales. So did I explain it well enough, guys?
You did. I would like to add that if you have installers, they probably should be tracked as cost of goods sold, because how else do you put them on any type of performance plan if you're not tracking how much each job costs you to install? So like our installers, we have them on a performance plan. If you get the job done on time and it's done right, boom, you automatically, that job and that amount of money that you just installed goes into a performance plan program that, then we cut a check at the end of every month for those jobs completed and paid for. So.
Yeah, and to your point, Rodney,
go ahead. I think
I was just going to say to Rodney's point there with and the cost of goods for your KPIs, like for us as a manufacturer, but we're also vertically integrated, so we've got installation and the sales side. So I mean, outside of just sales to dealers, we also have contractors and consumers. So we've got to look at it as our sales to margin ratio, plus you've got, we break it up in our manufacturing side of labor hours to cabinet units and different KPIs that we assign to that. And as well as the service side for the installation, like to Rodney's point, basically what he just said as far as performance indicators of how well they do on the installation process. And then you've got maybe three different subgroups to quickly define how you're doing as a whole, and being able to look at those numbers and have those indicators that you can quickly glance at and realize, well, this is how well we're doing. This is where we're falling behind, and being able to, it's a pretty macro look at your business, but kind of dividing it or separating it out into different aspects and understanding what it relates to in your business. I think that helps you get a clear picture of what's lagging and what's really striving.
Yeah.
Right. And you're a little different because you are vertically integrated. But, I think at some point, when you get to the option of having a set cost in there and then, dividing it out, I know manufacturing a little bit different, but, hopefully given whatever you're doing as your measurements, if it gives you a great clarity and metrics to be able to look at. I mean, that's what matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just if the KPIs. I mean, I've seen recently people out there with gross margin erosion. Okay, margin erosion, just real quickly, is like, let's say that you're selling something and you're selling it for 2,000 and it costs you 1,000. I get 50 margin, but at the end of the job, you have $200 extra, and so it's now 1,200, right? In cost of goods sold. And that's margin erosion. That's something you weren't like anticipating as a cost, because when you marked up your cost of goods sold, you say, okay, it's going to cost us 1,000. We want to have a 50 margin on this. I'm just using that as an example, right? But again, you have to look, where's the job end? If the job ended at like $1,200 in cost, then you had 10 margin points taken from that. So what was 50 to start off with ended up at 40. And one thing I'll also say about margin erosion is that those are the hard costs. The hard costs are things you actually have to pay. The soft cost of the people having to fix whatever it is, reorder, go back out to the job site, whatever, is about double that number.
Well, especially in this environment with, like you were saying, with labor and then also material availabilities, back orders, and that. I mean, the amount of strain that's putting on businesses right now across the board, manufacturers, all the way down to like Rodney as a dealer, the time it takes and the overhead required to what used to, because I mean, I think Dad used to say is what, 2.5, 3 trips per job was kind of the average, somewhere in there. Yep. So, I mean, take that and now you're almost doubling it, because you've got to go back for back ordered parts. You don't have enough labor to make that one install that you had to make with 2 guys. Only one guy could go out and make it. You have to go back to put on materials because contractors are behind on their portion of the jobs. So all of that adds up to, you've got to really stay ahead of that margin erosion that happens just on that amount of overhead due to circumstances you can't necessarily control, but you've got to figure out ways to mitigate that erosion, and then also have your customers understand your plight. I mean, you don't want to, obviously it's not their fault, but at the same time, you've got to understand, well, this is why this new process is in place, to be able to keep our prices lower, even though our raw good costs are going up all the time, or our finished goods prices are going up from our manufacturers all the time. This is why those prices are going up, so they don't think, hey, these prices are just going up and service is going down. They've got to, you've got to mitigate that somewhat.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. It's interesting too, because it circles all the way back to key partners and aligning with the right vision and core values, because there's some companies out there that don't care about service. They don't care about delivering a cabinet to the job undamaged or complete, and so it's like, oh, well, it's on the dealer or it's on this other guy to go back and put the doors on, or go back and do this. And it just 2 to 3 trips can turn into 6. And every one of those trips costs hundreds of dollars, because your mileage and your employees' time. And it's pretty wild. So yeah, key relationships, teammates.
Right. And sharing those metrics, like, if you really should be able to get down to the point to understand how much margin erosion is caused by a certain manufacturer.
Yeah.
And rank them and go to them and say, you know what? This whole thing was a test for everybody. Like, the sales ramped up after COVID, went crazy. And the really good companies that had better systems, better processes, better cultures, fared better through this thing. I'm not saying it was perfect, but you can imagine when this thing hit and a company didn't have those things in place, or a little bit more chaotic, all that did is like raise it 10 times what it used to be. And that's to Rodney's point. Like, this, you start finding out, like, who are the really good ones, who are communicating, who are those future partners. And that's so important, because if you have the wrong ones and they're causing a bunch of issues, guess what? It's going to just go and impact the customer experience and your brand and also all the additional work your team has to do to get around like the workarounds on issues that manufacturer is causing you.
Yep. You got to fire them. That's the bottom line, because otherwise it reflects on you as a company. Like Isaac was saying, the customer, they don't really care, because they want the job done at the end of the day, and they don't really want to know all the ins and outs of your business. They want their kitchen done, and they want it done right. And so if we're teamed up with people that can't deliver that, we got to make that hard choice and say, all right, yeah, they're not going to deliver, so we can't do business with them. And even sometimes it hurts, because we'll refuse to sell a product that somebody wants. And sometimes you'll lose business by doing it. But in the end, I think ultimately you're way better off.
Yeah. Well, establishing realistic expectations.
Go ahead, Isaac. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, just developing realistic expectations, and that's that communication upstream to know what everybody can accomplish and what's going to be repeatable, and understand capabilities and communicate that downstream, so that everybody's prepared for the best process to get to, as you said, Rodney, a complete project, the finish timeline under, because most of the time, the expectation, if we delivered our timeline in 4 weeks, but it's incomplete compared to somebody else's 8 weeks complete. But we don't specify that up front that, hey, I'm going to get it to you in 4 weeks, but there's some materials that they're just not available in that time frame, but you could get started on your project. Is that something you want to do, or do you want to just set your 8 week timeline and just have a complete product at that point? Both could be, depending on which customer you're dealing with, both can be positive outcomes.
Yeah.
But if you don't communicate that up front, then you've got a customer at 8 weeks yelling at you because they don't have their XYZ parts, because you didn't communicate them to them. Well, my 4 week lead time didn't mean that you're going to get everything. Right? Yeah. So amazing how just that little bit of communication can go, and then compare that to somebody else that was doing the 8 week timeline. You got your project started sooner, which what I thought you wanted, but didn't communicate that up front. So now we're not sure if that's what you wanted we're not on the same page.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's all about that good communication.
Yep. It's funny. I was, one of the things I think business owners, managers, whatever, are going to have to understand is that once they get these core values in place, they can't be wishy-washy about them. Because all that does is kind of diminish that whole culture inside. Someone asked me the other day, they said, so I have a top salesperson that's out there that does really well with customers, sells a lot. But when he comes back, like the way he treats the other people around here, I've talked to him about it. It's just, unacceptable. But he's my top salesperson. What do I do? Like, what do you mean? What do you do? Why don't you walk over to those other employees and just tell them, hey, look, I know this guy doesn't live the core values, but he sells enough to make an exception for us. If you sell enough, then you don't have to follow our core values. Like, just be honest. You're being like a hypocrite otherwise.
Yeah.
And they have to stick to that. Because, like you said, look, you may have a little downturn, and I'm not saying you're going to let them go that day, but you better be planning to get somebody else in place.
Yeah.
Because you can't face those other people and keep telling them that's what you're about and then not live it. And they see it. How much buy-in can you get from people when they see you saying one thing but doing another?
Yeah, you got to hire and fire by your core values, right?
Absolutely.
And then that's where it becomes like a coaching process. If they're not right, we got to get them right or get them gone. So.
Yep. And that doesn't take too long to figure out. It doesn't. I mean, it's not like a year. Like if they're going 3 months, 4 months, and their batteries low, and they're still having, an issue picking up on what the culture is, and acting in the right way. I'm sure. Like people wait every time they get rid of somebody, then all the other workers like throw confetti up, and they're all like, "Why did it take so long?" And they're like,
the
"I
big
know,
sigh.
I got rid of them a year ago."
Yeah. Customers are calling saying, "Oh, I wasn't going to tell you, but I saw him doing this." So you're like, why didn't somebody?
I know. You learn so much after they leave. You're like, oh, and you just kind of knew it anyway because you saw all the signals. And they just don't want to pull the trigger. Like, oh, I got to find somebody else. I got to hire them. I got to get them in here. I was like, the damage you're doing right now, keeping those people there is immense. How are you going to learn, earn the trust back from your people when you let that drag out too long?
What do you guys think is the root cause of like delaying firing somebody?
I think it's just the fact that they're scared of trying. Oh, I'm going to have to hire somebody. I'm going to have to train them. I don't have time now. I'll address that problem when things slow down. And they never slow down. I mean, even if it's slow, you got to go out there and you got to get business. So I don't know this imaginary time that it's going to happen. You just have to make time to do it.
Yeah.
It's that important to your company and your business and your culture there.
So
And that's what they're going to have to start living by. They can't just, like I said earlier, I don't know if wishy-washy is the right word, but they need to take a steadfast approach when it comes to the core values. So everybody understands that's what it is. That's the only way they're going to have buy-in and trust it and see what you're doing to live those values. When they see that, they're all in. They see this like swerving thing out here, they're like, whatever. So, did you guys have any other thoughts or comments that you'd like to add? Isaac, you look like you have something to say.
Yeah, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I think we got it figured.
Put the screw in the cabinet.
That's right.
I'm sorry?
I said we put the screw in the cabinet.
That's right.
All right, cool. Why don't we move on to our next one, our next subject matter? And we're going to talk a little bit about P&Ls and financials and exit strategies. I know a lot of people are thinking about it right now.
Everybody's favorite thing.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just my idea of how a P&L should be set up. You can see that everything that's in the sales side, as far as categories are concerned, I just put a couple in there. I don't want to make it too big. And then they have a duplicate cost of goods sold that's in the same order as they are above them. And the reason for this is that you have a clear understanding of your margins in every one of those categories. Like I've seen like sales up there, and then you get into cost of goods sold, and they're named all kinds of things. I don't even know like what they're supposed to be like comparing to in the sales side. So you need to get them in order and make sure that cost of goods sold goes to the right category. There's no other way to look at this thing. And then you see in this particular model, the average gross margin came out to 36. Here's the other thing I rarely see out there, which I would absolutely encourage people to start doing this. You need to lump expenses because you need to understand what those metrics are that are out there that you can compare to other people. And you also need to understand what they're going to add up to. And the expense side, they are also, just like margins, they are also a percentage of sales, right? So in this particular model, I take direct selling costs, which are salespeople, sales taxes, commissions, insurance, auto, whatever. And you can have all subcategories, but at the end of the day, you have to have a straightforward, this is our direct selling costs, and here's the percentage we're running. If you're running 18%, your total expenses are already way up there. I like to see it around 12 or less. I look at rent. You can't have your bricks and mortar too much. It's got to be 2% or less. You can see the other ones. I won't go through operations, technology. I put a little bit more in marketing now. I used to be a one seller. Now I'm a two seller because marketing has so many different aspects to it now. And that's, I have to just say something about a website. I went out to someone's website that I'm just started working with, and they had a blog out there that was from 2016. And I was like, whoa, dude. I was like, would you have something in your showroom that said, "Hey, we got an article for you to read," or if something is out there on the floor that's 5 years old, outdated, you'd be like, "No, I wouldn't do that." Well, then why would you do it on your website? Everybody's going to someone's website to check it out if they're going to do business with it. Okay, go ahead.
I was agreeing with you.
Yeah, cool.
And this is where you can derive a lot of your KPIs from, right? So you're going to get a lot of your performance indicators out of your P&L and how you set it up, and being able to reference this to see what's performing, what's not performing. How you have technology and marketing broken up is what the money I'm putting towards marketing, does that number track with sales as they rise and fall? Does the amount of money I'm spending that as a percentage affect sales? Does it seem like there's causality there? Is it just a random number that no matter what I spend, it seems like sales just do what they want? Same thing with technology and rent. Is my online, is my technology online? Is that whether it's a online shopping place or design sales through online strategies, or is it my showroom space? Do I have, I increase my rent because I've got another showroom. Did that increase my sales? And did it do it proportionately to where I'm going to be making more at the bottom line at the end of the day? And there's a lot of decisions that can be made with a well-organized P&L that when you, like you said, Thad, when you group it together in a lump that doesn't break it out to where you can see, you don't want it so detailed that you can't summarize the findings, but you don't want it so grouped together that you really can't find any clear indicator of what's going right or what's going wrong inside your business. And I think there's a lot of wisdom with what you said about organizing it the right way.
Totally. I think one thing I love looking at is I start with the question of like, how much do we want to make net profit? And then start working it backwards that way, which I think is a good question for everybody to ask, of like, how much money do you want to make? And you got to do a little bit of introspection to see like, okay, I want to make X amount, or do I want to make a little bit more so then I can also do this or that, and start with that. And sometimes it's scary to put that out there, because then you're kind of making a commitment to yourself that this is actually for real how much money I want to try to make next year or in 2 years or whatever that timeline might be. But then it really helps me dial back and care about the numbers, because I'm the type where I'm like, yeah, just give me the quick picture. I don't really want to know unless something's wrong. So that's why I like looking at the net profit and then adjusting things from there. So
yeah, absolutely. And having this as a guide, right? Because you know where your margins are going to run, hopefully, right?
Yep.
And if your margins are 29 or whatever, and your expenses are running 26, 27, you're going to have a 2 to 3% return, which moving forward isn't going to cut it.
Right.
Because, what do you think one of the big reasons, especially now, that they need to have at least a 7 to 10 to 12 point gap between expenses and gross margin?
Just because you got to invest in your business moving forward?
Absolutely. Like your business is going to turn into all kinds of different things. And if you don't have any money in the kitty to be able to afford to make these changes within your organization where you're investing,
right,
it's just going to slow you down.
Right.
And you shouldn't be making a return like that. Something's wrong with that model. And when you do the grouping, a lot of times it starts sticking its head out.
Yeah.
Like, wait a second, why is this so high?
Yeah, I think another thought to think of is how do you actually make more money? One of two ways. You either increase your prices or save on your expenses, right? So sell more or save more. It's kind of a simple concept, but there's so much with these kitchen and bath industries, like we were talking about the other day, is that sometimes we love it and we all get that hero mentality. We want to come in, save the day. I'm the only one that knows how to do this. Rah, rah, go me. And then you look and you're like, wow, there's just not a lot of systems here. Well, so sometimes we love that, but there's always like, all right, let's look at this in a structure or system way. Okay, if we increase prices, this is how much we might make. How much are we going to lose the customers if we increase prices? And obviously the expense side of things is you can drill down in a lot of different areas of how much are we spending on this or that. But
yeah. If you look at throughput, and again, which is basically sales, and as you're pushing that through your business, it's not necessarily, even if your plan is to stay where you are financially, which, if you're not growing, you're dying. But if you are just in that mindset where you're not really growth oriented, if you don't try to think about, well, how could I handle more sales, and what would that take, and where could I put that on my people right now? If your people and your processes are so maxed out that you couldn't conceive to put on another 10, 15, 20% of throughput, then you're in a big hole already. So it's not even looking at necessarily cutting expenses or that. It's more like, how do I handle more sales? And if I'm going to take on more, what am I doing right and what am I doing wrong? And if you're already maxed out right now at where you want to be, that means you're in a bad spot.
So you're talking about like looking at efficiencies then
right.
to grow sales throughput.
Yeah. I mean, really, it is. I mean, when you look at it, like how much like is like lost in the process, not only in the margin erosion side, but all the manual processes that are in there. Like you're trying to get these people up to 150 in gross margin per person, and they're faxing in orders to a cabinet place. I'm like, what? You're never going to get there with that. I mean, you have to have processes and systems.
What's wrong with a fax machine?
Right.
What's the noise that those things make? I can't make it.
Right. And so, we talk about that talent grab. This is related to that. Because if you can make things more efficient, and like people can generate more gross margin per person out there, guess what? You can pay them more.
Yeah.
If they're only growing, if they're only like at 110, you only have so much money you can spend in direct selling costs.
Yeah.
But if you build a program and a structure, like I said, systems and whatever processes, and they can now do in the same amount of time 175,000 gross margin per person. Right? You can, like, their compensation and what they can do, and I guess it takes away from all the stress because it's not just manual stuff that goes wrong all the time, and you will bring good people to your company. People will want to work in that.
Yep, definitely.
So for the financials, I think you guys were talking about it. That's the backbone of this thing. Like you have to structure these things so you can keep an eye on them and kind of work through your 2 or 3 year plan of where you're going to get, and make sure that you're investing in the right things and working on the right things to grow that number. I know we're getting a little bit towards the end, and if you look down, I don't think I mentioned the formula down there, but you're taking that 36 margin percentage, and then you're minusing the expenses, which are 26, and that gives you a 10% return on sales, which, if you have 2 million in sales, that means you're going to drop 200,000 to the bottom line. And, like I said, if you're at 2 or 3, you got to figure out how to get a 6 next year. And then the following year, you got to figure out how to get to a 9 or whatever it is. But it's really important that you start focusing on that. Otherwise, you could be left behind in the future. There's going to be a considerable amount of consolidation. One of the other things that we had on there, guys, was exit strategies. There are a lot of sunsetting owners in the kitchen and bath business. I've been to like the shows or whatever, and they're trying to figure out, like someone told me one time, was like, oh my God, this guy I know, he actually sold his kitchen and bath business. And it was like such a surprise that someone would actually buy it. And like, what's the value of it? Like, how well is that company being run? There are lots of companies out there right now that are looking to grow and they want to do it through acquisition, because they don't want to go into a market and find people, find partners, whatever. It's attractive, but they don't want to get a fixer-upper.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who has time for a fixer-upper where you're going to have to let half the staff go? They don't have a good culture. They don't have this. They don't they show you the P&L and you're like, what in God's name is this, right?
Yeah.
So, if they want to sell, they really got to get their house clean.
Mm.
Like this in 3 years or 5 years, and they want to attract someone to come in and they want a higher valuation, they got to do it now. Either A, no one wants to buy them, or they're going to buy it in a fire sale, right? Or they're just going to close the doors, or they're going to start working hard you have two choices. You're working towards selling your business, right? You've got an acquisition, whatever, on the plan for the next 3 to 5 years, or whatever that number is. Or the second option is that, you want to grow. You want to be the ones that is acquiring other businesses.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what you want to do, you can make yourself a better business and just stay within that footprint, which is fine.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, but hey, whatever. I'm just kidding. I told Rodney earlier, like when I hear people say, well, we don't want to grow, we're the right size. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm deaf in one ear. I didn't hear. What was that again? I'm just kidding. It's okay if you've got a certain size and you're happy and the business runs well and you can make it through the future because you're changing things. You have to do that. You just can't sit in that same box
Mm-hmm.
you're in now because other people are going to be moving forward. Next thing you know, 2 of your people just left, your best ones.
Yeah. And my experience with that, I'll share with everybody is like, I was in a position where I was feeling stressed. I was comfortable, but I didn't see how to get from point A to point B. So I got with my coach, we did some traction stuff, and now I'm at a point where I want to grow, but I want to grow in a way that doesn't cause extra stress. So we're always looking at systems, processes, efficiencies, all the way down to even a hiring process, sales scripts, that kind of stuff. And it's brought back the excitement in the business because I get to work on those creative elements of it, of creating something. And, we're moving forward in a good direction. And it's not just growth for the sake of growth. Like, we don't want to be chasing our tails trying to earn $1,
Right. I mean, that's no fun.
Yeah. And nobody wants to work for you if that's what you're doing either. They're like,
Right.
okay, I see what's happening here. I'm out.
So like this place doesn't have like any direction or clarity or whatever. Like they're all running around like banshees. Like,
They should want to be the boss, not scared to be the boss.
I'm living in that right now with the company I'm in.
Yeah.
But you bring up an excellent point, Rodney. One of them, and I know we're going to be closing out here in a couple of minutes, is that once you get these processes and systems in place and people come on board and you have like the training plan together to get them up to speed instead of just like, half whatevering it to like get them there. That just makes delays and them getting to be productive. It's frustrating for them. But if you're really, like you said, getting creative, what's the best way that we can get these people up to speed so we're not just putting them in a sink or swim situation? We have a plan to help them or provide all the tools they need to be successful.
Yeah,
we're investing in them.
Oh, totally. When last time we hired a new salesperson, the question became, how quickly can we train in a new salesperson? And before the common thought was, well, it takes years. There's some truth to that, but if we took that approach, we wouldn't have been systematized like we had been in the past. So we spent, a week, 2 weeks right now here's your training process. And it was a 2-month process. And the guy came to me after we trained him, and he said, this was the hardest thing I've done in my life, but it was the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. And, he was off and running after that. And it's like in 6 months, we're getting results out of him that we didn't really expect for over a year in the past. So it's worth the time invested. for sure.
Absolutely. Like you said earlier before this thing started, you lose somebody and the cost to the company, this is just like real cost, is like 2.5 times what you paid them. And that doesn't even count the brand damage and then the delays of going out and hiring. So, it's just, it's not a good way to go.
Yeah.
You got to be able to hold on to your people. Is there anything else on the P&Ls or exit strategies that you guys have been thinking about that we should bring up before we close out?
Not off the top of my head.
One thing I thought was, the comment or the quote, you build a business to sell it and then you keep it. So for the people that aren't looking for an exit strategy, it's kind of the same exact philosophy. You want to build your business, you want to systematize it so you could sell it and then you keep it. So you don't have all those headaches.
Right. It's like selling a house. You don't know when you're going to sell it, but if you're not taking care of it and it's like in shambles and then you decide that you want to sell it, then you got a lot of work fixing it up to like get a real evaluation on it, like for what it's worth. Otherwise, they're going to pay for what they see, So you got to start early in that game.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was great. Anything else, guys?
Oh, I'm good.
I'm just going to real quickly. Do we have a slide for what we're going to be doing in the upcoming ones, or just say it? So next month, I believe we have vertical integration and how those models are going to impact the kitchen and bath business. The following one, I think we have virtual. Actually, that's in January. Augmented reality and like what that's going to do. That's going to end up like having incredible impact on us. And then the other one is like the talent grab. Like people need to start planning on what that team is going to look like for the future, what skill sets that they're going to have, like how they're going to be able to attract people, keep people. It's got to happen, because you lose them, you're going to be in deep doo-doo, so you don't want to go there. Anyway, any closing words for you guys?
I just appreciate the opportunity to get on here with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Isaac, thank you so much, brother. Thanks for joining us today. And as always, Rodney, did a great job, both you guys.
Thanks for having me.
Being on here too.
Loving it.
All right, guys.
All right. Listen, guys, I'll talk to you soon. You have a great afternoon.
See you later.
All right. See you guys.